Looks like The Flash tripped its way to a mediocre opening weekend, and by the sounds of it, it's not that good of a movie either. Well, that's what I get for having hope. I didn't expect it to do well in theaters, but I was hoping that the movie would be good. I didn't get a chance to see it over the weekend, but the general consensus is that it's at best okay. When I get a chance to see it, I'll judge it for myself. As for the box office, I expected the low numbers. Black Adam and Shazam both underperformed, and I had a feeling that this might carry over to The Flash. Even Warner Brothers wasn't expecting that much. From The Hollywood Reporter, quote, starring Ezra Miller in the titular role, Warner Brothers and DC's The Flash is anything but flashy in the opinion of moviegoers. The film earned an estimated $55.7 million for the 3 days and a projected $64.2 million for the 4 days, notably behind expectations. Final numbers will be tallied Tuesday. The Flash had hoped for a 3-day start of at least $70 million, so as to come ahead of such disappointing DC titles as Black Adam, which collected $67 million in its first 3 days. Overseas, the superhero tentpole also faced challenges. It opened to $72 million from 79 markets, including a dismal $13.8 million in China, for a global opening north of $130 million through Sunday. The Flash had an estimated budget of about $200 million, and as we all know, many studios expect to make their budget back on opening weekend. That likely wasn't going to happen for The Flash for several reasons, the first beginning with the star, Ezra Miller. As the article explains, quote, box office pundits are divided as to whether Miller's off-screen woes are impacting the film's performance. Miller was arrested multiple times in 2022 and was the subject of several controversies, culminating in the actor issuing a statement in August of last year apologizing for their behavior and saying they would receive help for complex mental health issues. Miller walked the red carpet at the movie's premiere but has otherwise been absent from doing publicity for The Flash. For those who don't know, Miller was accused of being physically and sexually violent with several people, including a 17-year-old girl. Despite all the accusations, WB continued with the film, but it looks like their efforts to forgive Miller backfired. The video of him choking a woman was bad enough, but the thefts, the assaults, and the nonsense with the girl, that's hard to overlook, and it seems like it affected the audience turnout. Another reason the movie underperformed is likely because WB has already moved on from any films associated with the Snyderverse. When WB announced that James Gunn would take over and reboot the DC films, many people, myself included, said that it made the upcoming Black Adam, Shazam, Flash, and Aquaman films pointless because they were being abandoned. Anything being set up ultimately wouldn't matter because WB isn't coming back to these stories, so why watch them? That sounds cold, but it's the studio who decided to build this connected universe of films. If you tell the audience that you're rebooting everything, you're giving them no reason to watch the movies, and that seemed to be what happened. Black Adam and Shazam bombed, and it's likely the Flash is going to faceplant with them. It's possible that Aquaman 2 does well, but it's not looking good. Why? Well, because the Snyderverse has basically been a dud from the start. People like to blame Batman v Superman, but it really started with Man of Steel and the negative response people had to Superman's portrayal. I've said this many times, WB had the chance to course correct with Man of Steel 2, but instead they let Snyder make BVS, and it just went downhill from there. People liked Wonder Woman, and they liked the first Suicide Squad movie for a minute, but they had so-so responses to everything else. Aquaman did make $1 billion, but the film didn't really bring it out of people. All of the Snyderverse films have faced its apprehension and has gotten worse with each film. I think at this point people are just done with the Snyderverse, and they know that WB is too, so why cough up the money? Another part of this could be superhero fatigue, because even some of the MCU films haven't cracked their usual $1 billion. Since 2008, there have been about 40 superhero films, mostly from Marvel, with few attempts to do anything different. I think the best films are the ones that treated the subject matter seriously, like The Dark Knight, The Batman, The Joker, Logan, X-Men Days of Future Past, Man of Steel, and Wonder Woman, but even those films are all similar in tone. We might be coming to the end of the superhero craze. This happens with every genre. They run their course until the studio just pumps out enough schlock that people stop watching. Sometimes genres have a comeback, sometimes they don't. I don't think the superhero films are completely over, but I do think that there needs to be a shift in the storytelling, the concepts, and the approach, because the MCU method and the darker-than-now art method have worn out their welcome. The easiest way to switch things up is to bring in original ideas made for film instead of adapting another comic, but the studios still seem hesitant to let writers write. The genre needs some fresh ideas that are specifically made for film, and ones that aren't built around massive third-act CGI fights. There are tons of different avenues to explore with characters who have powers. It doesn't need to be limited to what we've seen so far. At any rate, there is one more film to go for WB. We'll see how well Aquaman 2 does. I'm not expecting much, but then again, Jason Momoa has brought it out of people before, so maybe he might bring sexy back and crack $1 billion again. I doubt it, but what do I know? I'm just some guy.